Hey everyone, Reed here at Big Strong Book, here today to talk about Pnin by Vladimir Nabokov. Nabokov has been somebody who I know I haven't done a review of any of his works yet on this channel. He is somebody whom, he's a writer whom I greatly admire. I read Lolita a number of years ago and read a little bit of Pale Fire as well. And one of the things that struck me then, and after reading this, I think the sentiment still remains, is just how fantastic of a prose stylist Nabokov was, and how much of a master of the English language he indeed was. I think that is without question, and funny that probably along with Joseph Conrad, um, it is in some way humorous that I individual. I know it's a little bit different with Conrad and Nabokov. Conrad's first language was Polish, and then learned to speak English as a young adult. Nabokov, I believe, was raised trilingually in the kind of the latter years of the Russian Empire, speaking Russian, French, and English. I might be wrong that if he was trilingual, but I'm pretty sure he was raised in kind of a upper class, aristocratic family, minor aristocracy in the Russian Empire. But nevertheless, to have that kind of mastery, to display that, he puts even native English speakers and writers completely to shame. And in this book, Pnin, it absolutely is a statement. It I think whenever I thought of something like Lolita as in a both ironic but also a real way, it's one of the best written books in the English language, and it is humorous to refer to it as that because the subject matter is so atrocious. Or it's so terrible. But that is Nabokov is completely with that book. He knew his skill. He knew absolutely what he could bring to the table. And Pnin, which I believe this was written just before Lolita, uh, is all that in a bag of chips. I mean, whereas in Lolita you get somebody like Humbert and that kind of just so well written but just disgusting narrator. In here you get the narrator is essentially a stand-in for Nabokov himself, relaying the story of Dr. Timofey Pnin, a Russian emigre from the empire, who his life story is very similar to that of Nabokov's in real life. He leaves the early Soviet Union when he's in his early 20s, kind of festers within Europe for a while before eventually emigrating to the United States, which is the kind of the path that Nabokov took. I believe Nabokov went from Russia to Berlin, maybe to Paris, and then from there to America, where he taught at Cornell and actually taught Thomas Pynchon. I believe Pynchon was a student in one of his lectures. But anyway, so Nabokov draws on a lot of autobiographical points for this book. You have the protagonist being this middle-aged, kind of almost sad sap and pitiful old bumbling professor, but who is the sweetest and at the same time the most life-affirming protagonist that I've come across in a book in a very long time. And it is a story in many. I mean, it's relaying a series of events within Pnin's life, but it is more than that. It's the story of a man who wants to feel at home, and a man who wants to have happiness, to be in the know, to be in the circle of friends, and there is almost a deep set of insecurities, as if as if who he is and his identity and that his past also weighs on him, in which it does in a lot of very interesting sequences throughout this book when he all of a sudden uh, imagines himself uh, back as a child or as a teenager in Russia, or he's back in Europe, and all these people are around him. And one wonders if Nabokov is turning this into a kind of self-satire of poking fun at his own journey. And there's a little bit of that. That's always at play, especially with how this book ends. In perhaps it's Nabokov trying to shake off his past as an immigrant, but then embrace it at the same time. But maybe the lesson that Nabokov learns, as well as Pnin kind of learns at the end, is that you can never shake it. But Pnin is just somebody who is, and it's hard for me to describe just how wonderful Nabokov's character work is within this. You get his if there is a satirical lens at play here, it is often the university system of the time, the departments, and how just based on the whims of department heads or college heads, you'll get, there Pnin he's a teacher of Russian, but there is no Russian department because there isn't enough students to sustain its own thing, and so he's kind of in a tangential way. He's related to the German department, and that's kind of his overseers. And this book begins with him taking the wrong train to a lecture, but he's able to find his way eventually, and that's what a lot of this is he is a man who is Pnin is so set in his ways, so set in how he does things, but there's a real vulnerability and a real pain behind him, and that's just where the magnificence of this book, it slowly grabs a hold of you. And again, this is Nabokov at his absolute powers, both in terms of how this was written and the feel of the words, with which obviously Nabokov is extremely innately talented, but then how he's able to create this kind of empathetic, kind of satirical, it's an empathetic portrait where he is so at a distance. He's both at a distance from his subject, but yet intimately acquainted with him, because Nabokov styles himself as the narrator of this book as a kind of a fictional stand-in, an unnamed fictional stand-in that knows Pnin and knew him back in Russia and knew him in Europe, even though Pnin, in those scenes as we see, Pnin doesn't recognize the narrator or grows to know him, but claims that a lot of things that the narrator thought of Pnin back in Russia were not true, were kind of exaggerations. But that's what Nabokov is removed from the subject of Pnin, but yet he is empathetic because Nabokov, I don't want to say Nabokov is Pnin. He's not, but a piece of him is Pnin. But Pnin is just, he's this lovable character, and I don't say that in just like he's a little cute character. He is so fully realized and so human in his desires, or in his failure to capitalize on his desires. He falls in love with this woman in Europe, Liza, who then turns out to be this kind of philandering, in a sense, crazed person who then has a son and then promptly gets pregnant, but then divorces Pnin, and then Pnin is kind of left adrift in a float almost, and then his estranged ex-wife then makes him support his I would say his son or his stepson, but he's not related to Victor, but he desires to have that kind of connection because he fundamentally has that connection with nobody. There are moments where he starts to build these bonds, and Pnin is ultimately, he's kind of taken for granted, or people just don't, I think, don't care about him. And that's just the almost the tragic undercurrent running through this work, is that Pnin is somebody, he tries to have that connection with Victor, even though Victor is in no way related to him, and he's not even doing it out of obligation to an ex-wife. He's doing it because he just needs to do something. Um, he he goes through a series of he will rent a room in a house. Usually these are colleagues at Wayndale University, where the fictional college that he's teaching at. He'll rent rooms, and he will. There are wonderful scenes where Nabokov just paints the picture of these houses, and there are houses where he is so fundamentally at odds with. There is the old style Russian within him, at odds with a lot of with the Americanized versions of things. With there's the general disdain that not only Pnin but the other professors have as well towards the predispositions of their students, of their young students, which is helps this novel to age very well, because that is something that professors from the 40s and 50s, when this book takes place, all the way to the present day, still haven't gotten over with. That kind of stuffy university elite professor class feel, that elitist feel, has never gone away, especially in kind of that American, the unique American tenured system. But Pnin, as he kind of goes from rented room to rented room, and eventually, and forgive me if there are minor spoilers here, but so you've been warned, when he gets to a point where he rents a home, not just a room, but rents a home, and has this faculty party here, and it is something that means so much to him, and then he says to his colleagues that he's thinking of buying the house. Somebody were at once he was at odds with kind of the things he would find in these homes and in these rooms, and he's comfortable now, and he wants to buy the house. But then at the same time, some of his colleagues, who he may have thought were his friends, are planning to just cut him loose, because other professors are moving on, and they don't find a place for him, and they feel that he is at odds with themselves. He is ultimately, Pnin will forever be the other. And then when he's fired, and then the narrator, who in that last 20 odd page chapter, where the narrator is regaled with these impressions of Pnin. Clearly, Pnin, I mean, literally has made an impression upon these people, to the point where they are mimicking him. They're telling stories. Pnin himself almost takes on this kind of mythological quality. He is somebody who is forever the jester in their eyes, but yet they seem to they can't shake Pnin's character from them forever, even though they can get him in that beautiful and just sad ending of the narrator seeing the truck, and then the sedan with Pnin in it, and then the truck behind, with Pnin kind of taking in the stray dog that is at his house. And there's that wonderful line at the end, as Pnin he's cleaning up his apartment, or his home. I say his apartment, his home, or the place where he desires to live. And as he's preparing that scrap of meat, and it's something like, a person's trash need not get in the way of a dog's insatiable hunger. But then Pnin has that hunger within him, but it is a hunger that can never be matched, be realized. But what does he do? He doesn't. Pnin never he never flounders. That's another thing too. Pnin never flounders. He moves. He moves on. Um, and there's even that those moments too where he feels himself, he's practically at odds with the Russian emigre culture that has kind of erupted in the on the East Coast, as he goes to this place with fellow Russians, and he still feels at a removal from them, and the kinds of things happening in their life. They're married, they have children of their own. Pnin does not have this. He does not. Pnin does not have roots to put down. And again, it's just it's almost a four-dimensional image that Nabokov creates within that character of Pnin that is just so lovely. It is so Pnin is one of the most fully realized characters that I've read in a while, and it further underscores Nabokov's just absolute brilliance to me. It was really a privilege to read this, and it's I love that I've read Pnin, I've read Lolita, I've read a little bit of Pale Fire, and there remains more than a dozen of his books left to read, and now I'm curious still to potentially after this read Speak Memory at some point down the line, just to see if that kind of bubbling pain underneath the surface of Nabokov's work here, if that becomes evident in a truly autobiographical memoir work. Nabokov is he's a master. And Pnin, if Lolita puts forth the argument at first, Pnin underscores it with its completely and utter portrayal of empathy. But again, it's kind of a sardonic empathy. It is a three-dimensional empathy. It's not just empathetic, it's also empathetic, but also poking fun at this character, but also Nabokov kind of, there's a piece of him that he needed to kind of exorcise from himself to put into the character of Professor Timofey Pnin. It's a marvelous, wonderful work. So if you have read, I would still probably recommend Lolita as a good starting place for Nabokov if you can stomach the subject matter. It's very well worth it. But Pnin is it's a marvel. So Pnin by Vladimir Nabokov. If you have read it, let me know what you think. And as always, I will see you guys next time.